Hello, Jane.
Hello?
Can you hear us?
Oh, hi. Yes, I can.
That's okay.
That's lovely. Are you keeping your video off just now, Jane?
Oh, no, hang on. I'm just pressed the right button.
You can if you want. It's totally okay. It's fine. Right.
Hi there, Jane.
Hiya. Hiya, Maggie. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. And you?
Good, good. Yeah, not so bad, not so bad.
That's great. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Investment Ready Webinar 3, which is entitled Financing Creativity. And that's something we're all passionate about, creativity, and we're all passionate about finding ways to continue to deliver fantastic events and support creative practitioners. This webinar is being recorded. It will be uploaded to our website and it will then act as an ongoing resource. Since this is a panel discussion, we won't ask our panelists to switch their mic off, but Jane, if you could switch yours off and then we can switch it, let you know when to switch it back on again. It's just for some part of the recording, it cuts down on interference. The Investment Ready is part of our Creatives Unlimited programme. The aim of this webinar is to have our inspiring guests share their experience of generating income and their top tips on how to manage all those aspects of that complex mix of funding and income that comes to that is involved in supporting the arts. Creatives Unlimited is a one-year programme, and that's part of our aim, which is to continue to support creative practitioners to make Dumfries and Galloway the place where they want to come live and make a living, to come live, work and make a living, sorry. I'm delighted to have Alex McQuiston, Lee Med and Aidan Nicol with us today. Alex, I've been desperate to call someone this, so I think Alex deserves this title. Alex is the impresario behind Absolute Classics. Fabulous organisation. We then have Lee Med, who is here today, representing Dumfries and Galloway Chamber of Commerce, but he has very many creative hats, and Lee will be looking at business. And Aidan Nicol from CatStrand, a fantastic organisation that's delivering in a rural area and delivering quality. So I should not forget a very important person, and that is to introduce Tabby, who's our creative producer. And Tabby will be helping facilitate the discussion and the questions today, along with myself. So, first off, I'd like to give all of our guests an opportunity to introduce themselves briefly and see what they do, and then we can get on to talking about some various issues. So, Alex, would you like to start us off?
Hello, everybody. It's nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me. As Maggie said, I am the director of Absolute Classics, and I have, along with my team, built up this organisation based in Dumfries and Galloway, bringing classical musicians from all over the world to perform in our rural region. And when they are here, they also give masterclasses and workshops with young people, with young musicians. Some are musicians and some are young people who are just, enthused and excited to be involved with some projects. And it's been a great privilege to be able to do this and build this organisation over the years.
Thank you, Alex. Lee, would you like to?
Yeah, thanks, Maggie. So my name's Lee Med. I'm the Member Services Manager with Dumfries and Galloway Chamber of Commerce. It sounds really fancy. It's not really. It just really means I do everything that nobody else wants to. I help people with the businesses of business. So I do lots of back of house stuff. I help with contracts of employment. I help with engagement in terms of making sure that all HR, all paperwork, all the really boring stuff is what I can help businesses do so they can actually get on with the business of business, no matter what industry they're in. Another part of my role entails organising the Dumfries and Galloway Business Awards, which is a biannual event, and it is the region's biggest celebration of business success. Normally we're looking at 375 people in the Easterbrook Hall for what is an absolutely fantastic night, which also requires a lot of organisation and a fair bit of funding, which is where we turn to our supporters and our sponsors, and hopefully we'll come to that throughout the course of the conversation. Thank you, Maggie.
Thanks, Lee. And Aidan?
Hello, I'm Aidan. I am the Arts, Culture and Heritage Manager for GCAT, which is Glenkenn's Community and Arts Trust, who run CatStrand. So my primary role, I suppose, is managing the year-round arts programme at CatStrand, which is a multi-arts venue in New Galloway. We also run a youth arts programme year-round, and we work in other venues in the communities of the Glenkens as well. So yeah, as part of that role, I am also in charge of the fundraising for the arts programme.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's super. So let's just get right on in there. We're looking at finance and income streams in this section. And first off, Alex, I've worked within creative organisations and including fundraising for a long time, and I was spectacularly unsuccessful in generating philanthropic giving. You, on the other hand, have some level of expertise in that area. So would you like to talk us through your absolute classics approach, and then once you've done that, then Lee and Aidan can join in. With
Yeah.
You.
Okay, great. Well, I remember that one of my mentors, a lady called Penny Lewis, who still actually works with me in Absolute Classics, she first told me that the main thing to think about is that it's friend raising. So you're trying to build a group of people who really enjoy the work that you do and they want to be involved in it. And the first step is to get them involved in being a friend and being part of a family, so they feel that they are involved in the organization on more of a level than just being asked to support or just being asked to attend. And as they become more involved in the family and get to know everybody, you'll be surprised that the job of the next stage of asking them to support is a much easier one than if you don't know them as a friend. I also think that a great resource is from a guy called Michael Kaiser. And Michael Kaiser was the president of the Kennedy Center, maybe he still is, but anyway, he was hailed as the turnaround king, and he came to England and different huge companies to turn around their huge deficits that they had in the past. And you can actually watch on YouTube, he does a whole course on what he calls it's like a circle of funding, where you first somebody come, it's great art marketed well, and he goes through this, and he's got 3 books out, so you can read it. So I think I've read them cover to cover and watched the classes, and so I would highly recommend that you do that. And he talks about this friend raising and bringing people into your organization on a level that they want to be involved in, and then working up from there. It's not philanthropic giving is not it's a long-term thing you have to think about. It's not something immediate. But on saying that, once you have got people who are involved in supporting you in that way, then they tend to be a reliable source who will support you long-term, as long as you keep sort of sharing the love with them effectively, keeping them engaged in what you're doing. They are likely to support, and you're likely to be able to increase that level of giving over time, depending on obviously many circumstances. So there's a little introduction.
Lee, in terms of business sponsorship, how do you and how much of that's transferable?
Yeah, well, it's funny because I'm listening to Alex there, and a lot of that stuff is very, very matching up with business sponsorship. It is a long-term strategy. It's all about building relationships, and again, when it comes to sponsorship, you really have to set your stall out from the start and say to somebody, "This is not advertising. This is sponsorship. This is you giving back to the community. This is you supporting and almost believing in the event or the organization that you are going to and you're sponsoring." And I think what Alex has actually done in the past through his sponsorship and his relationships with BDS is a great example of this. Obviously, Alex has got that relationship with Leslie and the team there, and those two things really complement each other in terms of the brand and the audience that both are looking to reach out and to appeal to. So from my side of it, when we start to think about sponsorship, it's what is my event or my project looking to achieve? What is the audience I'm looking to deliver that to? And most importantly, before I go to sponsors or potential sponsors, it's how does that audience in that market relate to the audience that the sponsor potentially will want to be engaging with? So there's a lot of prep work going into everything in the background before you actually even go and engage with somebody. There's probably more prep work in that part of it than actually going out and having the coffee and the cake with somebody to actually have that initial conversation. And I think it's just using the network of people that you know that you will have actually, as Alex said before, curated that not necessarily those friends in this situation, but just those people that you do know. So you can go to a business which you think will tie up there, and knowing the right person to get to. And there's nothing wrong at this point, I'm going to say it, with doing a little bit of LinkedIn stalking. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Because 9 times out of 10, if you're in a sales role, for example, like I started off in this role, which is essentially what member services for the chamber was, you always got to the gatekeeper, and you got to know the gatekeeper really, really well. You got to know the secretary, you got to know the PA, and then it was a case of building that relationship so you could actually find out a little bit more information about the real people that you needed to speak to. So when you did get the chance to go to a networking event, you already knew who you were approaching, what you were going to have something that you could drop into conversation, something about their business or organization, which would start that dialogue and then spin off from there. I mean, in terms of the business awards, we do them every 2 years because, one, it's an awful lot of work to do every year, but secondly, you want to have proper lasting relationships. The event that we are doing next week was originally meant to take place in March, but the marketing for that had actually started in the May of last year. So there's almost an 18-month lead-in time. So anytime we had that relationship with a sponsor, anytime something went out, their brand and their marketing, everything went with it. So it's thinking about building long-term strategies, long-term relationships with the right organizations and businesses that work for both parties and both audiences.
Great. Aidan, in terms of CatStrand, you have elements of a mix of blending funding with ticket sales. So I'd be really interested to hear how you work those two, not competing, but that can have very different needs.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow on from, I mean, it's similar in all these funding situations. It's about building relationships. So even with funders, you do build up a relationship over time. I think, yeah, you're not guaranteed that that's going to secure you money if you're not doing, what you need to be for them. But certainly it plays in your favor if they know the organization and they know you've delivered work previously. You kind of build up that trust so that people will know you'll be able to deliver on the claims that you're making in your funding applications. So that's important too. But yeah, CatStrand, so mainly the arts programme gets a big Creative Scotland Open Project grant, which usually does the year. And that the ticket sales form part of that strategy. So when we're applying to Creative Scotland or other funders that match that, our ticket sales are estimated, and that comes into the amount we apply to. So it is important for us to have those ticket sales because they are part of the funding strategy. Yeah, I suppose it's, yeah, again, relationship building with audiences and with different ways of approaching that to make sure you're getting the tickets sales up. We have tried to kind of diversify the offer of what audiences we're attracting to help boost that a little bit. And obviously it's quite challenging at the moment because we can't be open and selling tickets. So that bit of income is completely lost for us just now. Yeah, so that's, I don't know if that really answered any questions.
Absolutely. I know that Tabby has.
Yeah, well, it did answer a question, and it actually leads beautifully on to what I wanted to ask all three of you, which is the theme for this section that I'm hearing from all of you is networking and building relationships. So how have you all found that in terms of listeners listening in and getting advice? Networking and building relationships has not been easy this year. So yes, we've got social media, we've got Zoom and emails, but how have you all coped with maintaining your existing relationships and reaching out to new people this year? Alex, do you want to go first?
Okay, so with regards to, you know, the philanthropic support that we have, there's a sort of set rules that I use, and it has been, I do this every time. So say if you're giving to us and it's your time to renew, which obviously throughout this whole very bizarre period I have had to do, so you get a handwritten letter from me, and then which has your form in it, and then once you submit your donation, then I also send you a handwritten letter of thanks. So this happens all the time, and I think that's really important because it's something very rare that we get in the post, a lovely letter from somebody. So I think that's one thing. And apart from anything else, I have just been on the phone to people, our givers, and not only our financial supporters, but people who I haven't seen for now so long, who I used to see every month at the concerts, keeping in touch with the venues that we work with, keeping in touch with our business supporters. It's very, very important to keep that dialogue. And even if it's just a simple post on social media saying, we haven't forgotten about you, we're preparing this, or we're still doing education offering like this, we look forward to seeing you soon. These are the things that you have to do. People want to feel involved, and they understand at the minute we can't do the same as what we used to do. So, they're forgiving of that. But what they do like to be is kept in the loop.
Yeah, that makes sense. Lee?
Yeah, exactly the same as Alex. Really, I think what's been good for us this year is obviously we've got a membership scheme that goes out every time. So when your membership has come up for renewal, we'll send out that letter. We'll have that telephone call and that conversation. But 2020, if you're trying to operate a business or any sort of organization, it has just been crazy. And there's been support changes and funding changes. And I mean, let's be honest, at 2020, the start of this year, nobody had a clue what furlough actually was, yet alone we were going to be using it for this length of time. So from the Chamber's point of view, we've been really lucky that we've been able to engage not just with our members, but with probably a wider business audience than ever before, because people are looking for proper, up-to-date, reliable, trustworthy information. And that's what they can get from their Chamber of Commerce. We're an independent business organisation, which is great, and we're there for business, for the good of business. But we've also been doing things where we've been sending out more newsletters than ever before. We've been doing more Zooms, more things like this, more webinars than ever before. And I think the good thing about this type of thing is the fact that you both touched on at the start of this, Maggie and Tabby, the fact that we can record these and we can go back and watch them at a time that's convenient for everyone. So I think we've done something 13 of these events, specialized events throughout the course of the pandemic. And again, we've found that we've had a good number of people watching live so they can ask questions, so they can get involved in conversation. But the number of people that have then watched them in the following 48 or 72 hours has been superb as well. And we're getting questions coming in from emails after that as well. So it allows us to pick up that conversation and have that dialogue, which, let's face it, 9 times out of 10, you can't answer a question right away, no matter how good you are. So you're actually getting to know that business, getting to know that person, and being able to form a lasting dialogue and just picking up things from there. So I think things like this for us as a chamber, for businesses, have been really, really good.
Yeah. Aidan, how have you found keeping the connections and the relationships going with your supporters and regular customers?
I think it's been quite challenging this year, but it is the same, you know, it's trying to have that personal connection and make sure people don't feel forgotten about. I think a lot of our audiences are not that technically able, or they're not confident, or they just don't like the idea of engaging online with our work. So it's been interesting to look at how we keep them in the loop, and you know, and look at ways that we can develop that side of keeping in touch whilst not just losing a swathe of people. And I think in terms of fundraising, is maybe worth that personal connection with your funders as well. They're not just big faceless organizations, although they sometimes seem to be. You do usually have a contact who you've been working with over the years. So that's been useful for us this year to go and speak to Karen Dick, who's our link at Creative Scotland, who was able to kind of have Zoom calls or have phone calls about what strategy to take with funding and what the situation at Creative Scotland is. And so being able to have those conversations has been really important to know what direction to take. But yeah, communication, I suppose, is the key thing.
Which actually brings us beautifully onto the subject of audience development, Maggie.
So Alex, you know, Absolute Classics has grown and does bring in audiences from out with the region. So, you know, we're looking at that audience development, data and evidence gathering, and how to target your audience. So could you give us a little bit of your successful approach?
Yeah, well, okay. I think the first thing you have to think about when you're sort of looking at your audience is that you have to be honest, and that not everybody is going to like what you're offering. And I think that it's, you know, that's not to not be able to attract a wide audience. It's just you have to understand that people have got to be interested in it. So no matter how much you try to advertise to me to go to a rock concert or something like that, it's not going to happen. And I totally appreciate that with, you know, we're in classical music, that there's a certain demographic who are the key for that, but does not mean that we cannot try to attract others. So I think one thing that has been really useful for us during this time is that we have invested a lot more in our social media, and we have gone from something like 2,500 followers to over 11,000 on Facebook, which has been a huge jump. And that definitely is reaching more people who are enjoying listening to our type of work. So I think that has been really fantastic, and something that we wouldn't have done under normal circumstances. So, you know, there is always some light at the end of the tunnel. I think you have a duty to promote your work to those people, and, you know, it's not necessarily trying to reach different people, it's just trying to reach more people. And I think that's something that we have to take into consideration. But with that being said, we have to make it possible for people from many different backgrounds to access it. So whether that's your pricing, whether that's free tickets, whether that's, you know, how you're marketing, or where the venues are, if they're accessible, if they're not accessible, you know, there's all those different elements that you have to take into consideration to allow people to access whomever to access your event as easily as possible. And we've put a lot of concerts online recently, obviously, because we haven't been able to host them. So that has, again, had a different impact on those engaging with our work. And it's looking at your project as a whole, I think. Maggie, you're muted.
Gosh golly. We always have a joke when one of us forgets to unmute ourselves, like, gosh, that's a very unusual occurrence. We're silent. Sorry. Thank you very much, Alex. Lee, so looking at if you giving advice to a creative organisation at how to attract business interest in terms of that audience development as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think a lot of it nowadays comes down to two key drivers. It's data and what you do with it, how you can make that data attractive to those businesses, those sponsors that you're going to be engaging with. So we've been to an Absolute Classics concert, which is fantastic. We've done the online survey afterwards. We've gave feedback. Alex, for example, I'm just picking you, Alex, because you're here, you handsome man. You sit down with all this data. But what do you do with it? You, probably much like ourselves, will take the time to look at that data, see who enjoyed what, who came to what, where they came from. So when you go to have those conversations with potential sponsors, potential funders, you can actually say, well, this is the kind of audience I believe you are looking to reach, the audience in the upper Nifsteel category, because you have a new service that you're looking to target to them. We can actually deliver your branding and your messaging as part of our marketing campaign over this to this many people in this area. And if you've got a tangible that you can show to somebody, they will really enjoy that, and they'll realize, well, you know something, that's getting to an audience that I couldn't get before because I don't own that data. So it's about looking at the information that you have and using it for not just your potential, but for those of your sponsors, because that's going to deliver them something that they haven't had before, which is brand new eyeballs. The thing about social media is it's great, but a lot of the time, people will only see things they've already liked or something their friends liked. What your email marketing, or for example, in this case, will allow you to do is reach a whole new audience that didn't know they need your product or service. So what I would say is you've already got all this information. Make sure you take the time to sit down, analyze it, and actually use it, because it will be a gold mine. And once you've got into that, people will then talk and they'll come and say, well, if you've done this with Absolute Classics and you've done it with Brown Brothers, who can you do it with in Cuckoobrishire? You know what I mean? So it's taking everything you've got and looking at it that way and seeing how you can monetize that.
Great, thank you very much. And Aidan, in terms of CatStrand, a lot of you mentioned the youth strand. So how do you attract that youthful and also not just youth but diverse audiences to CatStrand?
Yeah, I think we have a number of strategies, but really, yeah, in terms of the youth audiences, we've applied different access schemes. So there's a youth access scheme that gives us a blanket £4 ticket on all our events for under 25s. That has been successful, whereas there were previous schemes of a similar nature, but they were a bit more complicated for young people to, you know, it was, if there's tickets left, you can get one at this price. It was a lot more kind of hidden or buried, and you had to do some legwork to get your cheaper ticket, which just young people are not going to do. So we made that very transparent and kind of made that prominent on most of our marketing material, whereas before it was maybe inside. So just prioritizing that. We also, because we have our youth arts program, we've got internship placements for older young people who directly influence programming. So we have a film internship, for example, who our current intern Thomas is 21, and he's supporting the programming around film for us. So it means he can deliver programs that are, you know, kind of with his peers in mind. That's helped to increase some of those audiences. And we've got a youth volunteer group as well, who can also input youth events as part of the main program. So we're not kind of separating it out. And I think that's all helped. So we've actually seen a 20% increase in young people attending events at CatStrand. And they now make up 10% of our audience overall, which doesn't maybe sound like much, but the demographic of the area is very elderly. So that's been really successful, and we've rolled out some more of those kind of access schemes to try and encourage different groups. So we're doing a partnership project with NHS Healthy Connections team and the Hub in Dumfries to offer this access to arts scheme, which is for people that get referred either through the Hub or through their GP, kind of looking at mental health or at kind of loneliness and how arts events can be a kind of prescribed help for that. So to encourage people to access that maybe wouldn't without that little nudge, and to give them a bit of supported access that could then continue on. I think having a heavy volunteer force at CatStrand has also helped, because maybe people come to help for a different reason, but they end up finding out about what's on or wanting to get involved as an audience member as well. And I think our local programs have really helped to diversify our audiences. Just being in a rural area, it's quite difficult to get to the venue. So we've tried to open that up and have locally programmed streams of work that we support, but that are community delivered and led. So that's just broken down a lot of barriers in terms of people not wanting to attend a CatStrand event because of, connotations of what that might mean that still exist. I think that's an issue across the arts, and how we're perceived. So just giving people a bit more power around that has helped to increase our audiences in the local area as well. So that's some of the things we've been doing that have been effective.
That's interesting that you're talking about the expansion, particularly of different age groups, different tastes, and targeting all the different audiences. So if we drill down into that, it's clear you're all really good at connecting with your existing audiences and expanding them. For events and creative organizations that are trying to bring in people from outside the region, what are your kind of top tips and words of advice, especially now because we're offering events that actually are attractive to people? They don't necessarily at the moment need to travel to Dumfries and Galloway, and I think increasingly there will be these opportunities where we're doing things online and people from all over the UK, Europe and the world can tune in and take part and watch these things. So how do you guys, with or without COVID, attract wider audiences outside of the region, outside of Scotland? Alex?
I think it at the minute it's definitely coming down to your social media marketing is the biggest thing. And I think if you're somebody who is not so keen on that, you should get a little bit keener because it's the way to find out what's going on quickly, easily, and also you'll find a lot more things that you're interested in and you didn't even maybe realize. I think if you're from an organization and you are using somebody who has a marketing degree or that's what their role is in your organization, they need to be very, very good at the back end stuff of social media marketing. So I don't mean just putting out very beautiful posts. I mean they need to be able to look at your budgets and how they're targeting the spend, because you can actually target it very precisely, but you need to know what you're doing. So if you're not having super success with marketing, you need to be having those discussions with your team and how you're going to reach them. And I think that also it's about posting a lot more. We think that posting maybe twice a week is fine, but it's really not. I mean, on Instagram, for example, there are people posting stories every day and you end up watching these and getting lost down the rabbit hole of them, and you expect to see it. And it's something that arts organizations need to take on board, that this is an ever-growing and it's very popular. And I think that is the way to reach new audiences at the minute, and also at an affordable rate. It's much more affordable than, say, print advertising.
Yeah. Lee?
Well, that's interesting because I was going to actually say going the other way at
Well,
this
that's
time of
what
me
I was
for
hoping.
Alex. To be fair, because I think there's social's great, but I still think social is a driver to other means. So if you've got a great teaser, you've got something great on social, it should always link into a full article or full explain or something on your own website. But certainly from a business side, for me, I found that as just now we're looking to grow, and we've got from business side the new South of Scotland Enterprise Agency and Borderlands and everything else. We were actually finding a lot of businesses in Ayrshire and Cumbria and Scottish borders were asking, they want to know what's going on in D&G. So we've actually found going into print, probably more, I'll be honest here, magazines, the newspapers that have got a longer shelf life are really, really good to reach the business, the owner, the leader demographic that we look to engage with. Again, because they've got that longer lead time, you can add that glossy, that picture, that explainer into it. And again, there's something still quite prestigious and quite comforting about sitting down with a cup of coffee and a bit of cake just to try and grab 10 minutes and flicking through the pages of a magazine, because it allows you to completely switch off from everything else and you're not distracted by the tweet above or the Instagram post or story below. You are perfectly just captured in everything that is going on about that article. And we find some of the stuff that we've done over in Scottish borders with people like in Cumbria down south has been really good in terms of people saying, actually, can you put us in contact with this business in Dumfries and Galloway, or what space is there? What warehousing space, what retail space is there if we were looking to take that next step in there? So we've found actual hard copy print media, traditional media, has been really good. And just now, actually, if you know who to speak to, we can sort out some pretty good print rates from what I've seen.
Aidan? Have you got
it's-
anything to add to that in terms of how you reach out beyond your existing audience, geographical audience?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because as an organisation, our focus is definitely on local people and provision for a quite specific area of Dumfries and Galloway. So it's not, it's definitely been interesting with our online events and online content that has been reaching people from across the country, and we can see that in looking at the data from events. So it's been nice to see new audiences engaging with the work. But I'd say our focus is still on producing stuff that's going to be tailored to our local audiences. So I guess just also in terms of the amount of content that's available from big arts organizations nationally, and we're very much trying to keep that tailored to keep our audiences engaged, because they can access bigger, more exciting arts events if they want it, but if they want what they usually get from CatStrand, then we'll have a specific tailored package for them. We definitely do try to expand what the Glenkens is with these local programs and how we can partner with other organizations to deliver work and reach wider audiences across the region. And so I think that's good. So long as we're still providing for our local people, then that's kind of a bonus. Yeah, but it helps with income generation, I suppose, during this time to be able to reach a wider range of people.
But I think it's a really valuable point, because I think local organizations sometimes feel pressure to expand much wider than they actually need to. And it's refreshing to hear, this is our focus, this is our area, this is the community we're serving, and that's what we're going to nurture and develop.
And that is, sorry, Tabby, if I can just jump in here, that is a really interesting one, because I think we're seeing more and more funders saying, we want to be seeing you to be growing your audience. We want you to be more daring, more dynamic, more challenging. And they kind of expect it to happen almost overnight, no matter what. And while some funders are saying this is the time where you've got a captive audience there, because you can do so much more with the resource that we have in front of us at Zoom, for a lot of organizations, it's not necessarily the place they want to go, and it's not the right time for them. So it is an interesting conversation that's going on.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Alex, what do you think?
I have various ideas on all that.
Do share some with us.
No, I think it's very important that you must remain true to what your key goal of your arts organization or as an individual artist is. But I know, for example, we've had supporters who have donated from watching the online concerts that we never would have ever come into contact with. And I think it's a really interesting scenario that we're in. And I think it's interesting to be able to explore new avenues, but I think what Aidan's saying about being true to what your organization is there to deliver is something is very important, because ultimately that's why we do art, whatever art you do it because you love it, and your audiences will love what you do, and they need to always be at the center of your work. We spoke a lot about, I suppose, because of all of our positions, about from an organizational aspect and point of view, but for many individuals who are trying to create at the minute, it's very difficult. And I think the themes that we've covered in this discussion so far, I think are transferable to individuals, and obviously it's going to take a lot more work, but it's because you're on your own, you won't feel supported as much, but it's definitely transferable, and it's all about building your network, not being afraid to ask for help and support, and using your social media to build your brand, and then look to print, of course, for your special coffee table editions. And good luck.
Alex, just when you say that about building your brand, and Aidan, you touched on this as well, because you said GCAT is still sometimes perceived in a certain way because of the brand that it has. How difficult is it for you to change that narrative of what's going out there, if I can use that phrase just now, that everyone seems to love, changing the narrative of what is going on? Because I know, Alex, we've worked together for a long time through various different things. And again, when you say absolute classics, you know what you're going to get. It's going to be world class. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be leading. But sometimes you must think, well, you know something, what can I do to expand to, and I've got to be careful how I say this, but you're going to know what I mean, the general punter. I mean, because obviously you've got that demographic. But I was thinking, if I was wanting to introduce my younger niece and nephew, who are probably about 12 and 14ish now, to the world of classical music, I know how to do it. I know how to bring them to you, but they might not necessarily be turned on to that right away. How do you go about taking your brand and maybe evolving that a little bit to reach a new audience without diluting your main one?
Yeah, I think that is a very interesting thing. And actually, the fact that we were able to do these online concerts and shorter concerts has been quite useful for that, particularly because we've worked with a pianist who basically his career is was not at the minute, was on the cruise ships. And so he was like a showman, and a lot of the stuff he performs is a lot more contemporary. It could be virtuosic arrangements of film themes or boogie woogie, and it's been interesting to see the reaction of our audiences to that. So I think it's taking advantage of every opportunity that you can, and you don't have to tweak it dramatically or drastically, and it's still first-class musicianship and playing, but you're correct, it is more geared to a different audience, and it's a little taster and a tester to see how it goes.
Aidan, did you want to respond as well and have anything to add?
Yeah, I think it's quite a long-term process to shift people's perceptions and your brand. And I think for us, it's about very targeted development and targeted work, whether that's about marketing or it's about your programming and just making sure you've got a mix of everything, and then you'll just start to shift those perceptions from the inside out. Is the tact, I think.
I think as well, and that just before we lead on to the next set of questions from Maggie, I agree with you, Aidan, but I also think, in fact, I agree with all of you, but I think when it comes to changing direction or changing older and unfair or out of date perceptions of a brand, it's about actually leading with it by example and walking the talk. So you actually live your brand the way you want your brand to be perceived. So if this is how you want to be perceived now, that's what you create. And everything that you give out, whether it's social media or events or the content that you put out, the images that you put out, are actually all feeding what that new image is and that new tone and that new look and feel of the brand is. That's how, and then that way you actually stop talking about what you don't want them to think of you, and you just focus on what you are now, and all that other stuff starts to disappear. That's what I've learned in my experience. Maggie.
Yeah, kind of going back to Alex's point about individuals and how difficult that is. Now, actually, at the heart of what we do is as creative practitioners. So, there's this, the covering your costs and making a surplus and reinvesting that into your program and to your practitioners. So, Alex, I know that things will have changed now because of COVID, but interested to hear your thoughts on how they've changed, but also managing those performance costs, artist fees, travel, accommodation, venue, looking after those people who are actually delivering the creative content.
Well, obviously it's changed a lot. I mean, the main thing is that because the musicians are not, they haven't been here to, well, actually we've done one set of concerts where the musicians have done their own concerts at home. And then we've just recorded a whole new series where we did bring the musicians up to Dumfries very safely to do the recordings. So financially, the price from one to the other is considerably different. When they're here, it's a lot more. The fee is a lot higher, and when they were at home, it was a lot less. And I think that the main thing is to be fair and try to find a balance. Definitely, when you're doing you must have a budget that you work to. And I think if you are dealing with agents, you should always negotiate very hard. Because they have their own idea of what things are happening, and you need to be very clear on what's going to happen. And that's not against the musician, because the musician will never even know that these conversations have happened, I think that's it. You have to try and find a balance that works for you. You must also find it's really useful to let agents and or artists, whoever you're dealing with, know very clearly what they're coming to. So for us in a rural area, they need to know, the venue will only seat 70, but we might only get 35 or whatever, because some places they'll say, well, it'll seat 2,000 and there'll be 2,000, so they have to understand the scenario. And I think that if you're honest and personable with them, then you'll get a long way with that. They'll understand, and artists generally want to share their work. So, you can come to a fair compromise with people that make it doable. I think that's my main aim. And also when they're here, make sure you look after them. Make sure, they have somewhere nice to stay, whether that's in a hotel, which is probably better at the moment, or in the olden days, they used to stay with me or with patrons or whatever. You need to look after your artists so that if it really goes well and you want to invite them back, they will come back, or they will recommend their friends. And all these things work into this building a community, a family around your organization and your work.
And I think also they can draw in additional income to the region, because when it's safe for everyone to do so, their experiences of the region help fuel their friends and family and others to come and visit us too. So great stuff, Alex. Thank you. Lee, getting the word out, and this budgeting word again, budgeting for promotion.
Budgeting, it's always an interesting one. I would agree with Alex in as much as make sure you have a budget and you stick to it. But I would say use your budget as best you can. Know your audience, know your demo, know who you're going after, and target that spend appropriately. I mean, I'm working on a couple of projects just now for different things, but I will allocate usually just under a third of my total project spend to marketing, because I can have the greatest thing in the world, but unless people know it's there, it's absolutely pointless me doing anything. You know what I mean? So it's a case of taking that budget and looking at the audience you're looking to reach over not just your launch weekend or your opening month. It's for the projects I'm working on, it's a long-term strategy, a 3 and a 6 month. So it's a case of how do I want to get the word out at first? How do I want to remind them about it in 2 or 3 months' time? And then again, 6 months' time, how am I going to refresh that message? So it's a case of going and speaking to radio, speaking to print, looking at social and what we can do on there and the different audiences we're looking at, and allocating a spend against that and sticking as close as I can to that. But at the same time, going back at those marker points and speaking to the people involved with the radio, the people in advertising from the print and paper side, and say, well, actually, last time round, this, and put tracking codes on everything. If you're doing stuff on social, use your pixel. If you're doing it online, put a code in there or something, so you can say, actually, we said we were going to get this level of engagement. Here's what we got back off the code. So you can go back and you can negotiate. You can have that conversation with them as well. So you can try and get a little bit of squeeze and wiggle room on there. But again, it's don't be afraid to try something different if you think it's going to work. And don't be afraid to have those hard conversations and change things at the last minute. But again, market the hell out of what you believe in, because if you believe in it, other people will trust your judgment on it as well.
That's greatly and leads on nicely to that about creatively and thinking out of the box. Aidan, how you finance and curate interesting events. How does that work for you, and particularly given that you're a smaller rural venue and you have a specific audience?
Yeah, I'm not sure where to take this question really, but I guess something we have been doing, just looking at income coming in from different sources maybe, is that we decided to make all of our exhibition space, and we have got exhibitions up now that are open, but we've also photographed them professionally and made them into a virtual gallery space on our website, and we're going to keep doing that. I think that's been interesting to see how it would work, and if people would view the gallery there, and we have had people viewing it who wouldn't have otherwise come to CatStrand, and we did have a woman buy something, which is very exciting, who wasn't from the region. So I think we've been seeing different ways of generating income that can help with that process, but also I think it's been a lot about investing in our artists, and like Alex says, making sure you look after people. And because we can't bring people in and look after them in person as much, we've been, I guess, looking at ways that, if we create that digital portfolio of their gallery, we're providing them with those images afterwards. So the money's, we're getting money from our funder to support us to put on these exhibitions, but actually we're able to then provide the artists with a resource to go on and use that in other spaces. And the same with, we've just started doing some in-house kind of filming musicians playing in the auditorium and filming that to put out as an event. And we'll do the same where we provide the musician with their copy the video. So I think there's something about that kind of investing in your artists so that we do have a healthy, supported economy of people and freelancers and creatives. And it's not just the kind of artists, I suppose, it's also looking at our freelance technicians and things who wouldn't usually, you know, we'd be giving them quite regular work usually, but haven't been able to. So different types of events, like events in the park that we did, so that we can be offering some work, or, you know, coming in to film an event rather than doing just the tech on it. So how we can just support that, which will mean we can continue to have people to program. I hope that's useful.
No, that's great. I also like the reminder that we are not talking about just performers, that there's a whole, you know, ecology built around that, and that there's what support staff without whom, you know, things wouldn't take place. So thank you for mentioning that. I think that was a good point.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really important for all organisations, especially just now, to reinvest by using local freelancers wherever they can, and local services, local businesses. I think it's going to be really useful, helpful and necessary for the local economy, for the regional economy. Lee, I wanted to pick up on something you said, which I agree with, but also a comment I wanted to share and wondered if you agree. I have found that that's one of the mistakes that organizations make. They never budget enough for marketing and promotion. It's not a free thing necessarily. It's not just a case of writing a press release and emailing it to some person that you hope will read it and put it in their paper. And also, actually, Alex, you mentioned this early on in our discussion. You, as an organization, made the decision to invest more in social media. This has all been about investment. I know that CatStrand has invested on the platforms that they need to professionally put things online. So you've all, as organizations, invested to reach out and promote yourselves in professional ways. What's the real advice in terms of reminding organizations to not under budget these things, Lee?
I would say if you spend well, you will get it back 2, 3, even 4-fold. If everyone knows me, I love, obviously, radio. It's my thing, but I think it's a fantastic medium in terms of return on investment and actually reaching an audience in places that you won't with social media, whether you're in the car, whether you're in the bath, or anything like that. I think sometimes what people forget is, for every £1 you spend in promotion and marketing on radio, you'll get £8 back, which I think is second. It is, in fact, second only to television, and then magazines come third, and then print after that. People think social media is the answer to everything. It's not. It will deliver you a certain audience, but there is still a whole audience that is not there. And the traditional forms of media and engagement are still powerful tools in the arsenal of any business or creative organization. So plan, speak, and if you're not sure, pick up the phone, because the people there, yes, they're there to sell stuff to you, but they're there to actually help you because they want to build a relationship. There's that word again that we've used so often this afternoon. They want to build a relationship with you over long term, so they're always going to do what's best for your business in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Thank you. And in terms of making the decision to invest more in social media, was that a hard thing? What was that hard fought? Because sometimes the marketing budgets are the ones that are thinned out the most. Alex, I mean...
Well, I think, no, it wasn't a difficult one, because I saw that we were going to have to put more of our content online. So therefore, we were going to have to promote it more online on that platform. And as I said, because there was saving in other different areas of our organization, we funneled that into the social media marketing. But actually, just thinking about different ways of marketing projects, you know, last year because I was really keen to try and get some outside advertising for our organization. But in our area, we don't really have too many of these big board things that you can sort of pay to advertise on. But I found that you can advertise on the petrol pumps, on the nozzles, and it was called ad nozzles. And so we put this amazing picture of this percussionist with these like beaters. Like, it was fantastic. And it went on all of the petrol pump stations. And it was, you know, it's just you have to keep trying to think. So I know I pushed on about social media today, but I'm with Lee. It's not the only way.
I would agree with you. Aidan.
I just had a point. I suppose that's all about marketing and cost of marketing, but I just thought it was important to go back to what we were originally saying about networks and relationships, and how that can support you to deliver an event, because I think you do have to spend money on some things, and you should be investing in your artists and not trying to cut corners with that and that kind of thing. But we are, if you work in a joined up way locally, you can definitely borrow things or hire things, and you don't have to always go out and buy new things. I think organisations in the region are working better together, and hopefully sharing resources is something we can look at. I know these events in the park, we got the marquee that I used was the Glenkens Farmers Market or something's marquee. So we just borrowed that, and there was different ways to make it work that meant it was more affordable to deliver an event.
Yeah, and I think organisations like the Chamber of Commerce, like the Chamber of Arts, which is DG Unlimited, and all the other umbrella organisations in Dumfries and Galloway are increasingly good at sharing resources and letting people know things are available for share, for hire, and talking to each other. Even in terms of metrics, there are groups that are sharing statistics to strengthen funding bids and things like that. So it's all useful. Maggie.
We have reached the end of this, and actually I could listen to you all for the same time again. It's been absolutely fantastic, great first-hand experience and solutions and approaches to this. Thank you all for coming along and contributing. It's been wonderful. Thanks to Tabby for supporting and working with to help facilitate our discussions. Jane, also, I think Jane would like to just kind of, if you would like to unmute and.
Yeah, I just wanted to, express my real thanks to this. I found it a really fascinating discussion. I mean, huge thanks for DGU and Maggie and Tabby for putting this on. But for the three speakers, you all came from such different perspectives. But it was a real holistic, and, I'm quite inspired actually, which makes a change for me. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jane. That's lovely feedback. It is lovely feedback.
And do keep in touch with us. We're always delighted to speak to anyone at any time, particularly to help support and promote the wonderful creative practitioners and organisations that Dumfries and Galloway is blessed with, and the individuals who help support and promote that. And DGU is proud as a team and as an organisation. We are proud to help support and spotlight the great work that's done. And let's not all forget that it has been incredibly challenging. And I think you've all shown superb resilience. And thank you for today. And have a lovely afternoon. We'll send out feedback form, and we will be delighted to work with Alex, Lee and Aidan again in the future.
I think you can count on it.
Yeah. And when it comes to a return to in-person meeting, as well as virtual, which, as Alex has pointed out, and everyone else, that's going to remain an important tool in everything, I think, that in every aspect of what we do. So thanks once again, and I think enjoy lunch, and hope to speak to you all again soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.